Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Cary Fukunaga. Now, that is a name I wasn't expecting to see show up for directing Bond 25. And the reason why I wasn't expecting that is because that's a name I've never heard before. My name is Tom Sears, and I'm joined by Chris Wright. And today we're talking about the latest Bond 25 news. How you doing, Chris? Say hello.
I'm all right. Hello, everyone. I honestly, I've been banding this guy's name about for years and no one's been listening to me. I don't know what's going on, Tom. Like, I swear every single podcast, he's the first name that I've been talking about. What's going on? Why am I not getting any credit for this, man?
Yeah, your crystal ball over there in Cardiff is you've been touting this guy's name for years now, even before Daniel was Bond, and look what's finally happened. So talk to me. What do you think?
Well, I think it's brilliant in terms of no one, and I mean no one, had an idea of this. It was one of those names that, like, it didn't appear on any of the forums, any of the sort of, articles, news articles or anything like that. So I think from that side of things, it's really good. Completely out of left field initially when you think about it, but the choice, he's got a lot of strengths. Now, I've only seen one thing that he's done, but that one thing that I saw was bloody brilliant. It was so good. So based on the one thing that I've seen, I think he could be amazing.
What have you seen?
I have seen the first series of True Detective. Now, have you seen any of his work before?
Do you know what? I had a little. His newest thing literally came out today on Netflix, which is Maniac. It's a Netflix series with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone in, and basically, I just watched the first episode before we sat down to record. I thought, okay, I need to get my Fukunaga on and see what he's all about. And I don't quite know what to make of the series yet. It's a bit, I feel like it's going to be a bit like Total Recall, in that thing of like people dreaming certain things, maybe a little bit of a Matrix flavor in there or something, but it's a bit sci-fi, a bit off the wall, a bit sort of different. And in the trailer, if you watch the trailer of it, there does seem to be a moment where Jonah's running around in a tux with a dicky bow on, and it looks vaguely Bondian.
Oh, really?
And the word secret agent was used in the opening episode. So I feel like, that kind of works, I guess. But yeah, it's. I tell you what's interesting, man, right? My theory, as has a lot of other people's theory, has been with the Danny Boyle debacle, is the him being like an art house auteur director. He wanted to do things his way, and Daniel and Barbara and Mickey G perhaps wanted to do things their way, and we're like, no, if you're going to do Bond, you've got to stick within the boundaries of, you've got to work with us on this. It's not all about what you want to do. And the kind of director that Danny Boyle is, I think it would be somebody who would want total control over everything. So that, to me, is a theory that makes sense of why it all went wrong. And he was like, nah, fuck this, I'm off. Now, this dude, when you look back at what he's done, he's certainly not a big name like a Danny Boyle or a Sam Mendes or any of those people. Like I say, this is today or yesterday when the news broke was the first time I'd ever heard the name Cary Fukunaga. So, so it's an interesting choice, and we did say that we feel like they would go with a director who's not a household name, who perhaps would be more willing to work within the boundaries of what they want. And I feel like this is one of those choices. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think definitely. I mean, he's got to obviously have a body of work to back it up, and I know he's not sort of an Oscar winner like some of the recent ones, but some of the stuff that he has worked on, from what I've heard, is meant to be amazing. Like Maniac, I know is meant to be pretty sort of out there, pretty off the wall, like you said. But the critics have been really positive about it. But I tell you what, should we have a little look at some of the back catalogue of some of the work that he's done, which has been quite interesting. So his first feature was a thing called Sin Nombre, which I think was in 2009. And that's basically, it was to do with sort of Mexican and drugs. And I think it was, it's set in that sort of part of the world anyway. But again, that won an award. There we go. It's a journey of a Honduran young girl and a Mexican gangster across the American border. So just keep that in mind for now. He's gone from that he did Jane Eyre. So he's done an adaptation, critically acclaimed adaptation of Jane Eyre. He's also done an Idris Elba starring Beasts of No Nation, so which also has had critical acclaim. And obviously he's done the 2 series. He's done the True Detective and he's done Maniac. Now, there's a few things that strike me about that. One is the diverse range of what he's done. I mean, you're thinking a period drama. You're thinking sort of an African sort of warlord thing. You've got sort of just a real gripping sort of a tense thriller. You've just got a big variation in what he's done. But equally, I tell you one thing that Bond 25 is not going to have, or not going to be. It's definitely not going to return to sort of a light-hearted, humorous, bit of Rog type movie. We're talking serious characterization. We're talking serious sort of, it's going to stay pretty dark, I can see. And I think the Bond character is going to be fleshed out, but not in terms of backstory, not in terms of parents or kids or anything like that, or brothers or whatever. I just think the character itself is going to go through a lot without needing to visit that sort of stuff. If someone sort of asked me what I think he'd bring to it, and that's kind of what I can surmise from what I've sort of read about his work so far. Interesting.
So, yeah, I suppose the curious thing about that is that it's not like there's a film we can rush out and watch that would be like, okay, that's the film to watch. You know, for example, say if Matthew Vaughn got the job, everybody would run out and rewatch Layer Cake, wouldn't they? Or the Kingsman series, and be like, okay, this will give you a little glimpse into what he might bring to Bond. With this, like you say, it's such a variety of things. And, you know, from something like Jane Eyre, like a period drama for the ladies, typically, you know, to something like True Detective, which I actually haven't seen yet. So that's going to be next. After I finish Maniac, I'm going to go and watch True Detective.
It's so good.
And I've only heard good things about that. So yeah, absolutely. So I feel like if you want some cutting edge Fukunaga, then switch on your Netflix and start watching Maniac. Literally released today on the 21st of September as we're recording this. 10 episodes, roughly 40 minutes each. And then I would say if you haven't seen True Detective like me, that would be a natural kind of place to go and check that out. So yeah, this is very curious for a number of reasons. And one of them is obviously it's our first American director for a Bond. And there's a Japanese connection in his bloodline. So is he like half Japanese or something as well, or he's got some Japanese parentage of some level? I'm
not sure. I know there's sort of ancestry, some sort of ancestry,
I did find a quote from John Glenn online. Somebody posted it somewhere, and I had a little look, and I couldn't find it again. I couldn't track it down. And apparently, he said it was interesting to see that this guy might bring around the Americanization of Bond, which I thought was quite a curious thing, because I would have thought he might have already done a little bit of that in License to Kill. But you know, it's definitely an off-the-wall choice that's come totally out of left field. Nobody could have predicted it. It wasn't in any of the press. And his back catalogue certainly doesn't scream Bond. You know, it really doesn't. So
no.
I think ultimately what we've got here is a director who they've gone to and they've said, listen, this is the story that we want to tell. This is how we want to tell it. Will you play by our rules and within the boundaries of what we want to do or not? And obviously to a Danny Boyle that said, no way, I'm off. And to a Fukunaga, it's, let's get it on. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, there's a little passage I found, which is basically Cary Fukunaga, what you need to know. So I'll just read it out briefly. So this is a bit about the director of Bond 25. He came to prominence when he wrote and directed 2009 Sin Nombre, about the journey of a Honduran young girl and a Mexican gangster across the American border. It won a British Independent Film Award for Best Foreign Film, the New Directors Prize at Edinburgh International Film Festival, and picked up 3 prizes at Sundance. In 2011, he directed an adaptation of Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, which starred Mia Wasikowska, Michael Fassbender, and Jamie Bell. He also directed and exec produced the acclaimed first series of True Detective with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. And he was also one of the this part's quite interesting. He was also one of the screenwriters on last year's It, Andy Muschietti's adaptation of Stephen King's thriller, but he then left the project, having been due to direct it. So he was going to direct it as well, but then he left the project. So that's a sort of an interesting side. Again, I think it was, well, it's that classic, quotations, creative differences, isn't it, Tom? We've heard that before.
Well, let's hope he doesn't make a habit of it.
Yeah, let's hope so. And so it's quite interesting because there's a little bit that he was sort of saying where in between doing Maniac and Beast of No Nation, he had 3.5 years where he didn't do anything in terms of directing. He was basically trying to get projects working that weren't working, and he said that it was 3.5 years, no production. His time was vaporized, and it was hard because obviously he thought of himself as being in the prime of his directing life. But he did say that basically, he likes to go around things in a twisted sort of out of the box type way. Now that is interesting because what we just mentioned earlier, obviously, Eon like to have someone that, they can sort of say, well, it has to be within this formula. But I think this guy will bring sort of a new style to it, basically, within the confines of what obviously they allow him to do, which I think is exciting, definitely. And basically when they were writing Maniac, they got halfway through 3 months just before production, and they decided to throw away half of the scripts they'd written because he was just like, no, it's not good enough, we've got to start again. So he's that kind of mentality, that kind of personality, which will certainly be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the most fascinating stories about the making of a Bond film that we've ever had. When you think back to what I refer to as the dark times, which was the 6-year break between License to Kill and GoldenEye, that has often been felt like, oh my God, we never want to see a break like that again, ever. That was unbearable, those dark years. And here we are. And I mean, people are saying, it's a 5-year gap. It's not really a 5-year gap because, Spectre came out at the end of October and this one's coming out in February. So it's like 4 and a bit years, 3 months later than planned. So it's not like it's a full 5-year gap. Yeah. But damn, dude, when you consider that over the last 10 years from 2010 to 2020, we'd have just about 3 Bond films in that time, 2012, 2015,
That's
and 2020.
Crazy.
That is crazy. And that is, in the realms of the huge gap between License and GoldenEye. Obviously, the difference is we have a Bond returning and it's not like a total refresh with a new dude. But it is a curious thing. And it does beg the question, Chris, is what is it that Danny Boyle, or should I say Eon, wanted to do that Danny Boyle didn't want to play along with, if that is the case of why he left, the creative differences? What is it? Do you think they're going to kill Bond?
Well, I think that was definitely had to have been one of the potential ideas. Whether that was one that they already had through sort of Purvis and Wade early on, or if that was one that Danny Boyle and Hodge brought to the table, who knows? But that has to have been discussed at some point. I think there's too many people saying it almost for it not to have been some sort of truth in there somewhere, if you know what I mean. But the other interesting is, obviously, the script. Will Fukunaga be working off a revised Purvis and Wade script, and will that have elements of Hodge's sort of ideas in it as well? That's kind of an intriguing aspect to it.
I feel like it has to. So from what our understanding of it is with Gareth Owen's posts on Facebook and stuff, is that basically when Boyle and Hodge came on board, they basically reworked the Purvis and Wade script and put their own spin on it. So I feel like, naturally speaking, the thing to do, maybe why the extra 3 months is needed now, is so they can either undo that Danny Boyle work and let Fukunaga do his thing and work with him on it, or it's again refining what they had with Boyle and Hodge. So it's gone from Purvis and Wade into version 2 with Boyle and Hodge, and now it's got to go into version 3. And whether version 3 is a step back and then a step to the side and then forward to get to where Bond 25 ultimately ends up, or whether it's just literally building on top of what Boyle and Hodge did, who knows? Only time will tell. And I feel like one of these days, if only it was going to be JBR, but I'm sure it'll be a different podcast. It'll probably be the Empire podcast or something. There's going to be an interview with Danny Boyle one of these days, and the questions are going to come up. And it'll probably be once Bond 25 is somewhat in the past or it's been released or whatever, and the story will come out, and we will all listen with bated breath to find out exactly what that was.
Totally. And when that happens, I can't wait. But I think that whole idea that we had of a potential royal connection or something like that, I think that was probably a part of it, and maybe Bond's death as well. But obviously we'll find out. So I tell you what, I'll basically the news was broken through the 007 Twitter feed. So I'll just read you out what was sort of tweeted. So we've got Michael G. Wilson, Barbara Broccoli and Daniel Craig announced today that Bond 25 will begin filming at Pinewood Studios on the 4th of March 2019, under the helm of director Cary Joji Fukunaga, with a worldwide release date of 14th of February 2020. We are delighted to be working with Cary. His versatility and innovation make him an excellent choice for our next James Bond adventure, said Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli. So a few interesting things there. Firstly, obviously the release date is Valentine's Day, Day 2020. Now that hasn't been done before, but that... Okay, if you're looking back at some of the Marvel releases, that is a huge weekend to potentially sort of release a film. And so I think there's been a lot of marketing now, choosing their sort of a replacement release date. And I think obviously they've looked at that and looked at the figures that some of the other films have sort of pulled in over the last year or two. And that is a good weekend to get if you could bag it without too much opposition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when are we due the next Star Wars film? Is that 2019? Is that next Christmas?
I'm not sure actually.
I think that's going to be 2019, isn't it? So Bond would have snuck in before the Star Wars, and now he'll come in after the Star Wars, if I've got my dates correct. So that's going to be weird for a Bond film to come out in February, man. That's weird, isn't it? Like,
it's either been summer or it's been sort of October time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
October.
It's going to be very, very strange. I guess I suppose the thing we have to be grateful for is that it's not a full year's delay. It was just 3 months later, so I'm happy with that. At the end of the day, for me, the worst part of the year is January and February. It's the 2 miserable months where the weather is fucking awful. And Christmas is gone, so you've got nothing to look forward to until it starts to warm up again. So this will be a nice little post-Christmas New Year gift whereby, all right, it's January, we're all wrapped up warm and freezing our bollocks off. But next month, we don't have to go and do the chocolates and flowers and, all that crap. We can go and watch Bond on Valentine's Day. I think that's the ultimate gift for men across the world. What do you think?
It is, isn't it? Well, Valentine's Days have passed. It's all been generally about the other half, so to speak. So I think it's now there's going to be plenty of happy boyfriends and husbands and partners around the world going, well, I think I know. I'm looking forward to Valentine's Day this year.
Indeed, absolutely.
Could be a good one.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So, dude, yes. Are you worried? Is there any part of you that's worried about this news? Like, in the sense that for example, if the news had broke yesterday, we've got Martin Campbell, he's decided to come back in and save the day, I think there wouldn't be a Bond fan in the land who wouldn't thrust their fists into the air and go, fuck yeah, brilliant, great news. Cary Fukunaga is probably like all right, let's see what he's got. So is there any part of you that's worried? Like, do you think, is there any part of you that thinks this guy might not be the right choice?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because, well, for a few reasons. When you get to watch True Detective, there was one episode where there was a 6-minute shot that's unedited, uncut, and it's a tracking shot. And it's probably one of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen in cinema. There's no CGI trickery. There's no jumping, from one bit to another like they did in Spectre. This was one clean 6-minute tracking shot, which is unbelievable. And it's within that episode, it's incredible. Huh. And I think someone that's got the talent to be able to pull that off, along with obviously the rest of that series, which is amazing. And two, the way the sort of Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are both brilliant actors, but they kind of excelled themselves and stepped up a level in that production, and the director's got to have a part to that. So I think he'll be a brilliant actor's director with whatever cast we get. So from that side of things, I think we've definitely got to look up. I don't think there's anything that I'm afraid of. Do you know what? I'm just so happy that we've got an official director. I really hope he stays on until production is finished. We've now got a start date and we know when they're going to start filming. So for me, I'm more excited than anything. And I know I haven't seen a lot, but from what I have seen, this guy has got the goods.
All right, that's a very confident thing. I think our homework is, for anyone like me who hasn't seen True Detective, is to go home and watch True Detective, or indeed Maniac, coming out on Netflix today. So I suppose the thing I'm grateful for more than anything is obviously, that we're back on track and we're full steam ahead again. Is that they are taking an extra 3 months, because I tell you what would worry me, and would be a little doubt in the back of my mind, would be if it was still on track for to start filming in December of this year. I'd be like, oh, hold on a minute. Like this feels like they're just rushing this dude in. Is this really the right way to go? They're just going to rush something out. So the fact that they are taking extra time, to me, signals that that's a very good thing. It's going to give them some breathing space to come up with something that's really solid and right. And dude, I feel like,
definitely.
If it is the death of Bond, if that is the big idea, I'm going to be, it's not something I want to see, but hey man, what a way for Daniel to go out. If that is indeed the way they're going to send him off, I feel like that's the thing that would be like, whoa, and people would flock to the cinema to see the death of Bond, I think, Yeah.
That's as a potential marketing hook, actually, for the general public. That is a big marketing hook, isn't it? If they did decide to go down that way, or even like have it sort of, it's not clear whether he dies or not. A bit like the whole Poison Blade in From Russia, the novel, or something like that. But it might be something completely different. We don't know, and if that doesn't turn up, then we just want a killer film, really, don't we?
That is ultimately what it all boils down to.
Yeah, definitely. But I tell you what, on the 4th of March 2019, when they start filming, we have to try and get a bit clued up on what locations they're doing, where they're going to be, if they're in the UK, if they're in Prague, if they're in Valencia, wherever they might be, New Zealand, South America, Norway, wherever they might be. We're going to have to try and visit at least once.
Absolutely.
To try and see what we can find out and watch a bit of action going on.
One of my biggest regrets is the fact that we didn't make it to London while they were shooting the climax to Spectre on the Thames there, because I know a lot of people did, and we could have done that, and we didn't for whatever reason. And I wish we'd have done that, because that would have been very cool. I did manage to witness that one little snippet from Skyfall where Em and Tanner are driving back to MI6 along the Thames there just before it explodes. I managed to see that being filmed, saw them in the back of the car driving along, which was very, very cool. But yeah, man, I think ultimately, and back in the Skyfall days, that was pre-JBR as well, so it wasn't our duties to report on such things. So yeah. Now, I tell you something that's funny. I think ultimately these podcasts are a time capsule, aren't they? From the moment we record them, they're a little snapshot of Bond history, in the sense that this is a snapshot of where we are right now. And somebody coming back and listening from the future, who knows everything that's happened. They're 2 years down the line. They've seen Bond 25. They know what it's all about. And maybe they come back and revisit some of the old podcasts. This is a little snapshot of Bond time and history in a place that we're currently in. So I would like to send a message out into the future for anybody who has already seen Bond 25 and Cary Fukunaga, did he pull it off? That's my question I'm posing to you right now. And I know you're listening to this and you have an answer to that in your head. And I'm curious, if I could reach through time and space and find out what that answer is, I would love to know. Because isn't that a curious thing? A lot of people have got in touch recently to say that they've just discovered the podcast or whatever, and they've gone right back to the beginning and they're working their way through. And it's funny to hear us speculating about Bond 24 and conversations about, do you think they'd ever bring back Blofeld? Nah, they'd never do that in a million years, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, it does happen, and how fun and entertaining it is to go back. So this little moment in time is going to be that in the future. What's your prediction? Do you think in 2020, 2 years down the line, somebody's listening back to this episode, are they going to be thumbs up for Fukunaga, or are we going to have another Tamahori on our hands? What do you think? What's your prediction?
No, I'm 100% thumbs up. Yeah, definitely. Good confidence in him. I think it's going to do a bang up job. Double thumbs up for me, in fact. So let's hope that everyone else is doing the same that's listening to this.
All right, good stuff. So today was a bit of an emergency departure, obviously, wasn't it? Emergency podcast, big Bond news. The whole train is back on the rails, and it's going full steam ahead. So a bit of an interruption to the normal weekly programming. So sorry about that, but we will be back. Well, I say we will be back next week. Our intrepid roving reporter Jack Lugo will be back next week with a special episode. It's an interview, which we won't reveal yet. We'll leave you hanging on tenterhooks. But he's got a very cool interview coming up for you next week. And then, of course, we will return in due course with our review of GoldenEye. So there's your homework. Go and watch True Detective all the way through. Go and watch Maniac and all of his previous Fukunagas, and then watch GoldenEye. And then, by the time we're back with that, we should be in sync with each other.
Definitely. Well, there's a couple of other little things I wouldn't mind just touching on. Firstly, with this new release date, that makes Daniel only the second Bond actor to span 3 different decades. Because if you think about Connery, 60s, 70s, and if you include Never Say Never, the 80s, and obviously Daniel now, he had obviously started in 2006, but if he's going up to 2020, then he'll have covered 3 decades, which is, an interesting sort of way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, Cary Fukunaga, he's directed The Beasts of No Nation. Now, that obviously starred Idris Elba. There's already people saying, oh, that means that he's going to be the next Bond. Cary Fukunaga might not even direct Bond 26, and it's just silly rumour mill, but that's going to start, don't you, and stuff like that. But that is one film that actually I would really like to see. Have you seen that one at all?
I haven't, no. That's going to be on my list. I'm gonna have a Fukunaga season, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch all of this stuff just to see what we're dealing with here.
Nice stuff. Well, there's one other thing that I saw, which is non-Fukunaga related. Are we allowed to have a quick chat about that?
Oh, it depends what it is. What is it? What's going on?
It is Bond 25. I went on IMDb before I was looking at Fukunaga's back catalogue, and there was something that I noticed under Bond 25 which struck me as a little strange. Okay. So at the bottom, if you highlight the full cast and crew thing, at the bottom of the cast, I think it is, or perhaps the bottom of the whole list, there's a bit where it says, Bond 25, the producers would like to thank Engelbert Humperdinck. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting one. All right. And so I Googled his name and put James Bond. And actually, back in May 2017, he was touting a potential Bond song. And he sort of told, I think it was the Evening Standard, that his record producer had sent him this song that he was going to work on called I Don't Want to Call This Goodbye, which he thought sounded very Bondish. So he was hoping that they'd take it and use it as a song that would have turned out to have been Spectre. And he said he would have loved to have re-recorded it and made it bigger. It's a dynamite song. But it's just interesting that on the actual credits, it's saying that the producers would like to thank him. So I wonder in what relation that could be. Obviously, it'll be music related in some form. Is there some little thing that he might have done, or what do you think?
Who knows? I feel like I remember there was that campaign to get Shirley Bassey to sing the next Bond song, whenever that was. I can't remember if that was pre-Skyfall or Spectre now, which of course won't happen again because that, Shirley had her time, God bless her, and did very well. But as a modern new Bond film, you wouldn't have somebody like Shirley Bassey from that generation singing the new theme. And I've go on, you were going to say something then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, she did obviously the song with David Arnold. Was it No Goodbye Goodbye? And that was actually pretty decent, I thought.
True, yeah. But at the same time, to carry a modern film in the modern times like this, they would have somebody more up to date. Do you know what I mean? They wouldn't go too far back, I don't think. But I feel like Humperdinck would be a bit of an untapped source. I could obviously the closest comparison to that would be Tom Jones back in the 60s with Thunderball. And I believe him and Humperdinck had the same manager. So they were kind of like on the same roster together. I could have seen Humperdinck do like a really balls out Bond song back in the 60s or maybe the early 70s even. I feel like he could have been a good choice back in the day. But that's very curious. I wonder whether that's just one of those little like Wikipedia type things where somebody's just sort of like stuck it in there. But I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it?
Well, equally, do you remember there was that thing last year or perhaps a year before where it had Christopher Nolan's production company, Syncopy, connected to Bond 25, and everyone went, he's going to be the new director, and obviously it is a load of hokum. So anyone pretty much can stick up anything on IMDb, but I just thought it was a bit of a strange one, so I didn't know if it was connected or not, but there we go.
Very nice.
So lots of homework to do then.
Absolutely, lots of homework to do. So yes, let's all toddle off and do that. Now, a couple of announcements, Chris, to make at the end of today's episode, just to squeeze it in. Our intrepid agent, Paul Jameson, he's obviously he's defected to Australia, hasn't he? Is what he's done down under to Melbourne, and he set up the JBR Melbourne group. So if you're a listener down under in that area, or indeed anywhere in Australia, really, look that up on Facebook, JBR Melbourne, and get involved with Paul. He's a top geezer, is how I would describe Paul. So get involved with that. Also, hot off the presses, Chris, I just literally saw this message pop up on my phone before we sat down to record, and I thought, all right, here we go, let's have a look. From Christian Evangelista over in the JBR Mid-Atlantic group in their sort of Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. area. He says, hi, Tom and Chris, this event is going on in D.C. on Global James Bond Day on the 5th of October. Now, I like the sound of Global James Bond Day. That sounds like it would be right up my street. And it would be great to get some more attention to it for the JBR Army. George Lazenby himself will be in attendance, not to mention all sorts of James Bond props in their exhibit. I'd be there myself, but it just so happens I'm getting married that day. Let's get your priorities straight, Christian. Come on. George is going to be there. Let's just put that off for a little bit, put it off for a week. The missus won't mind. And go there. And that's at the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. I've been there. That is one of the greatest museums I've ever set foot in. It is amazing. So if you are in the area, A, join the JBR Mid-Atlantic group. Again, search that on Facebook and get involved. And B, that's Friday, 5th of October at the International Spy Museum. You can go and meet George and get some Bond action on the go. And finally, just a quick shout out to JBR listener Lee Thomas, who is one of those people who recently found us and has been going through the back catalogue and sent us a message saying that it was funny hearing all the old mentions of speculations of what Bond 24 might bring back in the day and all the rest of it. So welcome aboard, Lee Thomas. Good to have you. And hopefully you continue to enjoy. That's quite a monster task, isn't it? Going back from nearly 5 years of podcasts and listening to all of them, especially, a lot of them are 3.5 hours plus. That's quite the time investment, isn't it?
It certainly is. So kudos to anyone that does it or has done it, I should say, either way. But yeah, we salute you, all of you.
Absolutely. Good stuff. JBR will return next week with a special report from Jack Lugo. You will really enjoy this one. I think you'll have fun with it. And then obviously to follow after that, we'll be back with some GoldenEye. So stay tuned for that. All right, Chris, I will see you soon.
Indeed. I'll see you soon too, bro. Take it easy, everyone.
Bye. Bye.